Hugh Hefner is my enemy.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about Hugh Hefner and the Amazon Prime docu-series entitled American Playboy, the Hugh Hefner Story. So why is Hugh Hefner? That is the question that's been keeping me up every single night that I've watched that stupid docu-series about him. Not only does the docu-series glorify him, that's to be expected, but they also try really hard to preserve his rather creepy legacy as a serial predator. Yeah, I said it! He was dating women in their late teens and early 20s when he was pushing 40, 50, 60, and beyond. And side note, just because someone's legal doesn't mean it's moral, you fucking creep. Most of us don't remember that part of his life because we only remember him as like the 80-something-year-old with a bunch of blondes on his arm. And I guess that image is only, is not only pitiable, but I guess also kind of harmless and cute because he's so old that he can't really be dangerous. But come on, he was abusing those women up until his last dying breath. And I'm sure he didn't abuse all the women that he slept with or that lived with him, but that's because abusers choose their victims. But before we get into Holly Madison's testimonies, let's talk about the doc. The documentary was published released in April 2017, just a few months before Hef's eventual passing in September of that year. It glorifies him as some sort of journalistic activist and sexual liberator, which he most definitely was not. And we knew that before this documentary even came out because Holly Madison's memoir, Down the Rabbit Hole, came out in 2015. However, women weren't really being believed at that time, and if anything, this book made people even more interested in the life of Hugh Hefner. However, in the year of our Lord 2020, we know that this docuseries is a bunch of BS and is obviously just damage control. Not only do they try to end the documentary on a high note when clearly Playboy as a company is spiraling and in debt, but they also don't have a single bad thing to say about Hef. He has no faults. All the people in the documentary have their nose shoved up Hef's ass. It doesn't help that in the documentary, all the people giving testimonies are either his family members, close friends, or employees. However, in the episode about feminism, Hef finally realizes that feminists hate him.
Feminist destroys Hugh Hefner on live TV.
I certainly would. The role that you have selected for women is degrading to women because you choose to see women as sex objects, not as full human beings.
Well, hold on
degrading. Now. The day that you... I want to say, I haven't finished. The day that you are willing to come out here with a cottontail attached to your rear end.
Hey guys, I'm just coming on while I'm editing, and I just think it's so sad, but also kind of funny that the same things that feminists were arguing back then in the 60s, we're still fighting for today. Gloria actually makes a brief appearance in the documentary, showing that Hefner wasn't such a great guy after all. And I guess, honestly, it makes sense that the documentary glorifies Hef because people watching this aren't looking to hear bad things about him, but to see him as one of America's great entrepreneurs. And Playboy itself has never really been concerned with women's rights or feminism, despite what those early articles might say. The docu-series has no incentive to pan to feminist critics because they already know that we hate them. And I say, fine, more for me to laugh at. So at the beginning of the documentary, we see Hef for what he is, a nerd. He was definitely not a playboy, he had mommy issues, and he ended up marrying his high school sweetheart, and that was it. He was simply a lonely nerd who liked to objectify women in a column entitled Co-Ed of the Month, published by his college's magazine. It took him until after college, when he was married with child, to start living his playboy lifestyle because the American dream didn't promise me what it said I deserved. So he transforms himself and decides to open his own magazine and decides to use naked women to sell things, which of course hasn't been done before. And he uses nude photos of Marilyn Monroe without her consent. Charming. I thought that this was going to be a big thing in the docu-series, but we never know or never hear how Marilyn feels about this, because it doesn't matter. He used her body to further his career, And that's just business, baby. So the early years at Playboy were phenomenally successful because you couldn't just get nudie magazines anywhere, and especially not with the girl next door types that Hugh had. His whole Playmate of the Month was seen in the documentary, or talked about in the documentary, as a genius idea. Another one of his genius ideas was to publish progressive-leaning articles in his magazine, even though we all know that Hef was definitely a Trump supporter. And the docuseries paints this out as Hef being woke, when we all know that he just wanted a Pulitzer. He even famously says after he gets his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that it's better than a Pulitzer, when we all know that he's fucking lying. He wanted people to take the magazine seriously, but let's be real, people just wanted to see the girls. And he built his empire not on award-winning journalism, but on the backs of young women. What a fucking asshole. The part of the documentary that made me roll my eyes the hardest was in the final episode when one of Hef's goons say that Hef single-handedly started the sexual revolution. Like, suck on my balls. He didn't start shit. It was women of color, the LGBTQIA+ community, trans women. They started the goddamn sexual revolution, period. Women were already posing nude for magazines before Hef, and those assholes don't claim to be the bringers of the goddamn sexual revolution. Hef only championed himself as an activist as a marketing scheme, when in reality he is probably one of the sleaziest human beings on the planet, or at least was. And if he does see himself as a liberator, which obviously he does, then I have nothing to say to that except he only wanted to liberate white, thin women to sell his magazine, make money, and to justify his own sexual desires. And yes, he was pro-abortion and pro-birth control because those things saved him from paying child support for 18 years. And I am, and we all should be, more surprised that he doesn't have more children. He not only helped to sexualize women more than they already were, and to basically raise a whole other generation of men to see women just as body parts, he also made women give up careers as vets, teachers, and nurses in order to try to win their chance at the lottery that is Playmate of the Month/year. Which, let's be honest, is rigged anyway because the award for Playmate of the Year and Month usually goes to Hef's girlfriend at the time. He also forced women into terrible and compromising positions as bunnies at his various clubs and casinos. And why do we champion the Playboy clubs with their ridiculously dressed waitresses as chic and progressive, but treat maid cafes in Japan like some sort of disgusting perverted fantasy? They're the same fucking thing, you racists. There was not one woman working at the magazine who wasn't a glorified secretary until his daughter came along to take over as CEO. And this all should be very telling that the only positions that a woman could take up at his company was either a waitress, a secretary, or a playmate. And one of these secretaries ended up actually killing herself because he didn't want to take the fall. Fuck you! Now to talk about Hef's love life. Hef was obviously polyamorous, and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with polyamory, but a lot of his girlfriends weren't cool with it, and he would also get very jealous and didn't like when his girlfriends would also date around, which is not okay, and doesn't make any fucking sense. And to repeat, he was a predator. The documentary has no shame in saying these girls' ages, which were like 19 and 20 when he was already well into his 50s. Instead, they frame it as romantic, as Hef being the teen he always wanted to be. Because remember, he was a nerd. Hef was a nerd. He wasn't attractive. He didn't get girls. So instead, he decided to create a media empire to ensnare young women so he could finally get the girls that he always wanted to when he was a kid. Our hero, everyone. And in the documentary, when he gets married for a second time, people are like, he finally has time to be the father that, he always wanted to be. He had time the first fucking time, but instead he wanted to live out his high school fantasies. And even funnier is when he gets married for a third fucking time, and they say the exact goddamn thing. They say, he finally has time to slow down and be with his wife. Yeah, because he's like fucking dying. The only good news is that at the end of the day, Hef's company is not doing well. It's going bankrupt. It's in debt. And honestly, that makes sense to me because Hef only wanted the company for himself to use it in his lifetime. He knew Playboy couldn't go on forever. He knew that it would eventually become obsolete. And he was fucking fine with that because the only reason the company even existed was to please him, make him money, and let him fuck around. I do feel bad for his daughter, his first child, who basically grew up without a father and then inherited a deteriorating company. His sons will be fine, I'm sure. Not only do they have the name and connections and at least maybe a trust fund, but also, Hef seems to be a real father to them and wanted to be around, unlike with his first marriage and first child. So that's it. That's everything wrong with Hugh Hefner. Watch the documentary if you want to. There are some interesting parts. I mean, I think it does make you feel conflicted about Hef as a person, but after you learn that he started dating like 18-year-olds when he was like 40, it's like, what the fuck? Just stop. They don't even try to really examine that because it's creepy. They don't even really reenact those scenes with the actors they have playing Hef and his girlfriends after he gets to be a certain age because they know if they depict it with the actors, it's gonna be fucking creepy. So they just don't. That's it. If you want to know more about Hef, I suggest going down to the sources in the description. I put some things that Holly Madison has said about him. I'm happy for her for speaking out. I definitely believe her, and I think we all should. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share it with someone. Comment down below on what you think about Hugh Hefner and the Playboy empire, you can say. All right, and that's it. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Hugh Hefner is my enemy.